Welcome. I'm Meredith. This is the Oasis Spiritual Empowerment Tarot, all about tarot, oracle, and empowering you. And tonight, I want to finally do a video someone requested, and I tried to find the request, but it's been a while. I'm just not sure who it was anymore, and I apologize. And I apologize for taking so long. But this video is about how I read Oracle. And part of the reason it's taken me so long to get to this is because there's no simple answer. It depends on the deck, it depends on the moment, and it depends on a lot of different things. So hopefully this isn't going to be a rambling video. I'm going to try to be concise. And what I've done is basically broken out Oracle decks into, there are a few different ones that we're going to go through, because there are certain categories of Oracle to me. Like, this is just my own personal thing that really affects how I use them. Okay, so let's get right in. Oh, but remember to like, share, and subscribe. And when you like the video, even if you don't like a deck or whatever, it's great because it really helps to have the video, the channel, shown to other people who might like it. So let's start with maybe the more complicated way. Well, maybe not. So for this is the wisdom of the Cailleach. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. And I have you pulled out because I do want to show some spreads. Now this deck, oh God, what a great deck. This is such a great deck. This is incredibly evocative to me, but it's more than that. The way I use this deck, you might as well just add "it depends" to absolutely everything I'm going to say in this video, because it does. But primarily, the way I use this deck is I will pull one card, right? And I will focus on that one card, and I will just let it transport me. And this deck does that so beautifully. And for this, so there are different ways that I go into cards. For this deck, it's a very kinesthetic experience, and I'm drawn into this world, right? So it does come with a lovely guidebook. I don't really use, honestly, because for me, the message is in the experience, right? So it's going to be different at different times. Like right now, to me, this is an eye, right? It's like looking into the eye of a giant. And that's not normally how I see this card, but there we go. So by gazing into that card, whatever the card happens to be, it kind of pulls me in, and like I can feel the cool air. Like, this is cool air here, I can feel just it's an experience, right? And within that experience is the message that I need. So it's not the same experience every time. Like, if I pull this card 10 times, it's not going to be the same experience. It's not going to be the same message to me. Part of it, I think, will depend on where my eyes first focus. Like right now, today, it's going to the Hagstone, but it doesn't always. It might go to like that Widowmaker branch, right? It might go to the hilltop. It might go different places, but that's going to definitely color the experience or focus that experience for me. Yeah, but this is, I mean, there are keywords. I don't really use them. It's all about the experience for me. And so my takeaway from using this is usually going to be a lot more in depth. This is definitely a longer process than a simple reading for me, because I will spend time in the cards, and that amount of time changes. I stay till I'm done, till I have what I need in that moment. And sometimes it could be, I mean, I never time it, right? But it could be 5-10 minutes. It could be an hour. It just depends. So with a deck like that, I definitely try to make sure I have plenty of time. And along those lines, the next deck like that is Devas of Creation, and this is by Scylla Conway. And this is another one that I don't bother with guidebooks or anything. I just go into the card. This one's a bit different though. So with the other deck, it's almost like experiencing a dream, right? There's like a storyline that happens when I go into the other deck. With this deck, it's pure feeling, right? There's no real plot exactly. It's a feeling and an idea that comes from that feeling. This is another one that I just go deeply into. It just sucks me in. I'm trying to formulate the words because I don't normally talk about this. So the way I use it is, so there are two ways. So generally, most often, I will pull one single card, right? And that's all I need. And I will just, it's like I let myself get absorbed by the card. That's probably the best way I can describe it. But I will say that sometimes I will create a sort of pathway for myself to travel. Because again, I am still going into each card, but I'm stepping into one, spending whatever time I need there, and then I'm entering the next, and so on. And usually when I do this, I am usually in my bed or on the floor, and it's, when I do a spread with this, it's usually a big spread, and this is a long process. Definitely I would say at least an hour, but I will use a lot of cards, and I will just go into them until I'm done. And usually what I'll do is I'll shuffle them, and I'll start pulling cards, usually with jumpers. It just depends. And I'll pull till I feel like I'm done. Now there is another way that I've done this that I like, and it's, I'm trying to think of how to. So basically what I'll do is I'll lay all the cards around myself, right? And I lay them face down. And then I completely circle myself with the cards. Sometimes I'll use the whole deck. Sometimes I use just a good portion. Then I spend time, probably a good amount of time, honestly, and just feel what card pulls me. Now, if you've never done this, this is a really neat exercise. If you just kind of put your finger, sometimes I focus on one finger, sometimes I'll use a whole hand, but you put your finger maybe, I don't know, about an inch from, can you see that? I don't know. About an inch from the cards. And give yourself a moment to kind of notice how that energy feels in that space, right? And at first it might not feel like anything, and that's okay. Let it sit there. And then as you begin to feel it, probably warm up a little bit just from the heat of your fingers. That's fine. But then just allow yourself time to kind of go over multiple cards. And at some point, you might feel, now sometimes it's different, but often it's like a pulling feeling where I just feel my finger being pulled down. Sometimes I get like a prickling feeling. But there'll be a difference, right? Telling you this. A lot of times I'll do this with my eyes closed. Sometimes I do it with them open. Doesn't matter. Do it in whatever way is easier for you to focus on that feeling. You know, by closing your eyes, you shut out everything else. So it can often be easier to focus. So I do this, and then whatever cards call to me, I'll just kind of pull forward. So then I open my eyes, whatever, and the cards that didn't get pulled get put back. So I'll be circled with, however many cards, and at that point, I'll flip them over. And then begin. And I just kind of let myself get pulled where I'm starting. Because again, it's in a circle around me. So the beginning is wherever it feels like it is, right? It doesn't matter. It could be behind me. It could be on the side of me. It's wherever it just feels like we need to begin. And so I'll go through and I'll jump into each one. So with this deck, I don't worry about, I really never worry about the meanings that the artist had in mind. This is it's an energetic experience. Now, occasionally, I will also use this as a purposeful thing. Like I'll go through and pull a card specifically. This one I use a lot. That's what made me think of it. This is such a beautiful, peaceful, wonderful place. So sometimes when I feel like I need that, I'll just pull this card and focus on this card and let myself be drawn in. And again, it's kind of wherever my eye goes, that's sort of where I end up. So sometimes I might be at that far end. Sometimes I might be here beneath the tree. It doesn't matter, but I'm just going to go there. And it's, it's not a divinatory thing. It's more of relaxation. Now, sometimes when I do this, certain things will come to me. But sometimes it's just a way to relax or recharge. So yeah, those are the ways that I most often use this deck. So far, I'm not really pairing these with tarot. Now, the next deck that's a good example of this type of work is the Tattered Oracle, which is by Naya House. I'm only going to take out one. So, this is another deck that I just go into the cards. Now, this one I do sometimes use with tarot. I mean, sometimes I use... What do I? I don't even know. I definitely... I have used... I don't know about Wisdom of Cailleach. I don't think I've ever used that with tarot. But primarily, I use this on its own. And this is another one that I just kind of go into the cards. Now, with this deck, I do tend to use bigger spreads. So it's usually in threes. It might be 3, might be 6, might be 9. Or it'll be just 1. That's generally how I do it. And so when I use this with tarot, I use it kind of with, but kind of separate. So, generally I'll use the tarot first. So I may do a spread, I'm just using tarot, use other oracles, whatever. And then at some point during that, I might feel like I really need to dig into this specific area. And that's where this will come in when I'm done with that initial reading. Then I'll pull this out, focus on that thing, whatever that was, and do a spread. That's usually how I do it when I do a spread with this. That's usually what prompts it. Now, if I just want to use this deck on its own, a lot of times I'll start with one card. Depending on my experience with that card, I may or may not pull others. I wish I could give you like definitive things, but that's just not how I work. It's all about feeling for me, and what feels right in the moment. But I would say primarily these 3 decks are representative of oracle decks that I use on their own. Even if I may occasionally use them with tarot, pretty much on their own, pretty much just for me. That's just how I do it. Now, there are, of course, decks that I use primarily with tarot. So that's what we'll do next. So, healers. Oh, sorry, I need a drink. Healers of the Earth Oracle is a great example of that. It's Mystic Mandy, mysticmandy.com. This is a beautiful deck. I'm not super in love with the backs, but it doesn't matter because the fronts are fabulous. Now this deck, very, very evocative, beautiful, beautiful imagery. If you've been here a while, you know that often I kind of disregard keywords and things, but I like these. We have multiple words. There's like a title card which can be keyword like. It's not always. I feel like there are some that are, like, oh, where'd it go? There was one that was like cloud formations. I mean, that's not really, that's more of a title, right? But we have these 3 at the bottom: schemes, conspiracies, intelligentsia, wisdom, visionary ability, goodwill. So this is a deck. A lot of times I'll use this at the beginning of a reading. This is one that I use with clients. This one is good for generally when someone comes to me and we start talking, you know, shuffle as we talk, and if they're not really clear on why they're here, right? What are they looking for? This is a good one to maybe pull a card and ask them and say, you know, so for this one we have change, renewal, releasing obstructions. So they're in the same vein, but they're still very different. So I might say, you know, are you looking to change some things? Is there something that, you know, you feel needs to be different? Is there something you need to be different about? Or maybe there's something that up until now has been kind of holding you back? You know, so we kind of go into it. And now they might say, no, it's got nothing to do with me. And if so, that's fine. They might say yes. They might say, you know what, all of that sounds about right. Like, I need to kind of think about all of those things. So at that point, and you would think, oh, there we go. I don't know that I would necessarily pair these two, but we're going to do it now. So I might go and say, okay, so what needs to change? What really needs to change? Because it's not always what you think. You know, it might be something very different. So this deck, in case you're interested, is the Trionfi Della Luna full spectrum, which is fabulous. So, you know, okay, so here we have change. What about renewal? What needs to be renewed? What needs to... So we go there. And then for obstructions, what is that thing that's been holding you back until now that needs to be released? Because it's not always what you expect. You know, so that gives me the beginning for the reading. But then I move on from there. And how I move on depends on how I feel, depends on the clients and their responses and their interest and things like that. So, but it kind of gives me that beginning framework. So, sometimes I do use this deck at the end of a reading. And when I do it that way, there's a couple ways for this too. So, depending on the reading. So, some readings might just be like a kind of more standard spread. In that case, yeah, I'll pull like one card, maybe to kind of sum it up, food for thought, that kind of thing. So now, depending on, you know, what the reading was saying, you know, we'll think about how does this tie in, right? But sometimes, you know, a lot of times people come and they're like, well, I can't decide. Should I do this thing? Should I do that thing? What should I do? Where should I go? That type of thing. In that case, I will pull, usually I'll do some sort of spread, kind of showing each path. Not always, but sometimes, oftentimes. So in that case, I'll pull one card for each path, right? And depending on the cards, depending on the moment, the feeling, this may or may not be the end of the reading, because sometimes I'll pull these cards and one or both will kind of make me feel like, we need to dig into something a little more here. Or, you know what, there's a direction that maybe we didn't address in this path. We need to go down there. So I'll do another tarot spread into this. It just depends. And, you know, like I said, you might as well tack that on to everything I say, because it's the truth. But yeah, I really enjoy this. I use it more for others than for myself, but it's a great deck. Now, as an example of a deck that I really do look at the keywords, because there are decks like that. This one, and this is Messages from the Mermaids, and it's by Karen K. Artwork by Linda Olson. I do take the keywords for this deck. I mean, they're very big and very obvious. And I think this is maybe the best example of a deck where I tend to look at the keyword before the artwork, or at least right about the same time. So this definitely influences what I perceive in the card, I would say. Use it with tarot. I don't think I've ever used it by itself. But it's a great companion to a tarot reading. So I might let's grab somebody smaller. So this is the Asherah Tarot by Sarah Wheatley, and it is one of my favorites, but I have so many. But just to kind of give you an idea, so if I do, usually with this deck, I don't use it in the beginning. So I'll do a spread. You know, we'll do like a half Celtic cross, right? So then, based on what I get from these cards, I might say like, we need to go look deeper into the moon, right? What's going on here? What do we need to understand or watch out for? Or, you know, what's that? You know, where's that really going? You know, so then I might pull a card from here to help steer that reading, right? So that's primarily how I use this deck, and in decks that fall into this category. This is one that I think for me is less, I hate to put it this way, but kind of less deep than some of the other decks. And it's not a bad thing. I don't mean it in a bad way. But I mean, it's beautiful and it is evocative. But I would say that I accept this kind of surface presentation much more than a lot of other decks. But sometimes it still takes me in a different direction from that keyword. And I'm open to that, you know. Again, I go where I feel called with every deck. But generally speaking, that keyword, that, you know, that obvious message tends to be the one that I go with this deck. And there are other decks like this. So again, these are just examples of types of decks, as far as I'm concerned, right? Okay, so then, love this deck. So this is Forest Fae by Nadia Turner. Now, this deck, I use a couple different ways. Sometimes I'll use it if I just want to quickly get a message, like first thing in the morning, sometimes first thing in the afternoon. So we have for this, like, away we fly, take the cloud roads, delight in your imagination. Now, sometimes with this, like, that's it. I'm like, yeah, this is a great message for the day. I like this, you know, whatever. Sometimes it may just kind of strike me, and I'll say, you know what? We need to do a reading based on this card. You know, so what, you know, if I was doing it based on this, I might say, Where does my imagination need to go? Right? What do I need to really think about? Is it maybe it's about how to be successful. You know, maybe there's an area that I haven't explored, something that's a little different. I need to go in a different direction. What could that be? And then kind of go from there. So this becomes the root of that reading. Now, sometimes I'll do a reading and I'll have this whole big reading and more than this, but for space. I might use I'll almost definitely use another oracle, right? So say we picked one from here, right? So we're back to the mermaids. So then I may just kind of add to that and say, okay, what do we, and sometimes, especially because they're so small, it makes it easy. I might say, all right, 3 of Cups. What do we need to think about with that? What do we need to think about with the Hermit? Oh, where's that support going to come from? Okay, so these are different ways. I might do it for all of them. I might do it for 1 or 2. It just depends. But these are a great extra reader. Sometimes with clients, I may do this whole reading. I give them their message, and then I say, you know what? Let's see, just, what's one more thing that you need to think about? It might not have anything to do with the spread that we did. It's just a little personal message for you. Okay? Spell singer cast spells of wonder and delight. And, if I got that message for somebody, it depends on how I feel. But right now, I would say, what do you do for yourself? What do you do that's just for you, that brings you bliss? And if the answer is you don't know or nothing, what can you do? What do you used to do? What's that thing that you used to do so long ago that you almost even half forgot about? And how can you begin to do that again, right? So it might not have anything to do with that original reading. It's just, sometimes I feel like there's an extra message that needs to be given. All right. So the next type, let's get another drink. The next type, okay. This one's pretty unique for me. So this is Witch Cats. And this is by Nicole Pierre. And I do have her spirit cats too, which I love. But I tend to shy away from decks that have these big messages on the back. Her decks are an exception. We're sliding away with a lit candle. That's not good. So, as you can see, sometimes I do crazy shuffling and they get inverted, and that's okay. But, all right. So with this deck, sometimes this tends to be one that I pull just one card. Not always, but often. I would say this is a one card for me. This tends to be one that I'll use either at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll kind of go through and look at them and say, where do I feel pulled? Who feels like they have a message for me today, right? And then when I get one, I'll spend a minute looking at the card, kind of feeling what I feel, and then I'll flip it and read. And these are fabulous messages. So like, this is celebration. Meet Pixie Puff. She is the princess of parties, the empress of extravaganzas, and the fairy of festivals. She raises an effervescent glass of rainbows. She bounces, prances, and dances with her friends. She celebrates the sun rising and the full moon shining. She praises your performances, your creations, and your achievements. And she delights in the simple yet wondrous gift of your existence. You are worthy of celebration. Invite Pixie Puff into your heart and infuse your day with rainbows, congratulations, smiles, and festivity. I mean, what a fabulous message, right? So I'll take that as my message for the day. And, I'll tend to think about it. Like, how can I create more whimsy? How can I celebrate myself? How can I reward myself? How can I, so these are the things that I tend to think about. Now, based on how I feel about that, I may do a reading based on it. I might not. And, I will, this is a deck that I'll use like to keep that card out throughout the day so I can look at it. Sometimes I reread it. Now, other times I will just pull a card, and I'll kind of put forth that energy and say, what do I need to think about right now? What do I need to focus on? Where do I need to go? And whatever kind of comes to me. That's the one. And again, I'll spend a moment kind of, feeling out that energy. What is this art saying to me first? And, it's not a logical, conscious thing. It's a feeling thing. And then I'll read the message, which that adds that conscious level layer, right? Because the feeling is your unconscious. So, sometimes I'll add this to a tarot reading. Not so much. I think with spirit cats, I used to do it more, but now it's primarily just kind of its own thing. I just like it on its own. Like I said, I may branch off and do a reading based on this, but I generally don't have it as part of that reading. You know what I mean? So there's that. Oh. Right, here's one more that probably should have gone in with the other ones. So this is Mystical Shaman Oracle, illustrated by Della and it's by Alberto Villaldo, Colette Baron Reed, and Marcela Lobos. So this deck is another one that just sucks me in. Comes with a big book. I don't really use it. It's got titles. Sometimes they have like a keyword sort of thing. Sometimes they're really just titles. Doesn't matter to me because I just get absorbed in the art. And I go where the art takes me. So this is another deck that I really go into the card. And it's another one that I really just used for me. I would tend to say this deck doesn't take as long as the others. I don't really know why, but it's just, I mean, maybe sometimes, but I think in general it doesn't. Most often I use this on its own. Sometimes, a lot of times I'll pull just one card, but I will do a spread And again, we have 3, 6, or 9. Just tends to be how I do things. Now, when I do a spread with this deck, it's a bit different. Instead of kind of moving from card to card, it's more of usually one card pulls me in. Like right now, this one's pulling me in. These really aren't, but they just kind of add to what I get from this. I hope that makes sense. So even with a bigger spread, I'm not diving deeply into every single card. So maybe that's why it's faster too. But I still take from the other cards. It's just not... I don't know. I don't know why I do that like that. It's just the way I do it. Yeah, it's just one pulls me more than the others. That's the best way I can describe it. And I know that's not a great explanation, but that's how I do it. And again, the messages, though, are more based on my experience with the cards than set messages, you know? Now, we talked about how I tend not to use guidebooks. Here's one where I do use the guidebook, at least sometimes. So this is Into the Lonely Woods by Lucy Cavendish and Dan May. Now, this deck is so great on its own, but it's also great with tarot and other oracles. And in fact... Oh, where'd it go? I actually quite like it with Journey of a Lonely Soul Oracle by Charles Harrington and Anna Machbaroda. So, wasn't gonna pull this out, but we're going to now. So with this deck, sometimes I'll use it strictly just doing the oracle thing, right? So I may do a spread, could be 3 cards, could be more, and then sometimes I will pair it with this deck specifically. I just feel like they go really, really well together. Now, for both of these decks, I do use the guidebook. It's not my first go-to thing, though. So I do look at the titles, which for both of these decks, they're very evocative to me. You know, hope is like a hummingbird. And then paired with that beautiful image, right? So the first thing I do, I would say that I take in the title kind of at the same time. It's all kind of one with this deck. Probably with this one too, or close enough, right? You know, whereas a lot of other decks, I'll look at the image first, or with the mermaids, it might be at the same time. It might be more the keyword first. I don't know. But this one, it's kind of that whole picture. Now, I don't always use the guidebook, but I do because I do believe that it adds to it. And that's rare for me to say that. But it does. It does. And both guidebooks are beautifully, beautifully written. Sometimes I'll pull just one card from the deck. Not as often, though. I tend to pull multiple cards with this deck. And you know what? Here's the other thing with the way I use this deck. It it tends to come out into complete thoughts, like the titles. So, for example, let's just pull. Now, of course, it's not going to do it because I said that, but let's see. So we'll do 3. Just kind of see what we get. So we have the littlest blessing, a time to rest a while, hope's like a humming. So of course this one not so much, but well, even here it still is kind of like a sentence. You know, so really focusing on those titles, you know, to me, the message is that blessing is that you have that time to rest, to recover, to recharge. Hope is like a hummingbird. It can be very fleeting, but it can be very powerful, so much more powerful than its size, than it seems, right? And beautiful, and something to really hold on to. So I take these titles first and create that message. Then I look at each card and figure out, like, where do I need to go within that card? What's calling me? What's speaking to me? You know, like right now, I'm seeing these vines coming up, and it speaks to me of connection. It speaks to me of grounding of oneness. And it doesn't always. Sometimes I focus on the flower or the ladybug. It just depends. And then I'll do the same thing here. And a time to rest a while. Is it, you know, this card feels very appropriate today because it's so blistery cold outside and cozy inside. But, you know, I'm really focusing on that knapsack. And, you know, maybe it's time to rest from material stuff for a while. Maybe it's time, you know. So it just depends. And then when I combine this deck with this one, it's a continuation of that thought, of that sentence. So not like a fairy tale. Misted promenade, cradled by the sky. So again, of course, this, I swear, most of the time this comes out to be like a sentence. Maybe because I'm not doing it as a real reading. I don't know. But it often does. But yeah, I'll focus on creating that sentence first, or that idea, or that message. Then I go into the cards. So that's how I most often use both of these. But once I do that, I will, not always, but I will often go into the guidebook and see what it says. And sometimes, I'll admit, I just kind of skim. And I'm like, ooh, what's this? You may feel small, but you're capable of the most amazing feats. And I just latch on to that idea. Sometimes I will read the whole thing. Again, it just depends. I'm just open for whatever, right? I think that's the key for me anyway, is just to kind of be open and go with that flow, that, you know, wherever it feels like it pulls you. Because for me personally, when I try to get too rigid about the way I read, that's when it becomes slower to come, right? The messages. So the more loose and open I am, the louder the cards speak to me. Now I want to include this one because this one's a little bit different too. So this is the Whitmere, right? Whitmere Oracle deck. by Sarah Whitmire. Sorry. It's a small deck, but it's so fabulous. There is so much going on in these cards. This is one, I just pull one card. Sometimes I'll do it as a card of the day. Sometimes I'll do it to kind of end out a reading. So I guess I use it in conjunction with tarot, but not... I don't pull this deck when I pull my tarot deck, right? This is maybe... I've done my reading with tarot, and I'm like, I need something more. And then I might grab this, if that makes sense. I don't really focus on the words for this deck. I focus on, like, there's so much in these cards, and I'll pull a card, right? And when I pull it, I just kind of, it's almost like I don't focus on anything, right? I'm just kind of open. Like, my gaze is just open. There's no one focus. And wherever I get pulled, that's where I go. And at that point, I don't exactly go into the card, but it's, I go into that piece. I'm trying to explain this. And please let me know if, is this kind of how you do things? Am I just being crazy and weird? Or is this, maybe everybody does it? I don't know. But this is how I do it. Like here, right? Like if I might just focus just on this little thing, right? Which isn't focusing at all. But that, right? When I do, it's like that piece and I exist into a space unto ourselves. There's nothing else. The rest of this card is not there. It's just that little piece and me. And sometimes I'll see more of it, right? Like it'll have 3 dimensions. I'll be able to see maybe the back is different, right? Maybe the side's different. Maybe it's the same. I'll come away with, sometimes it's just a feeling, sometimes it's a sound, sometimes it's a message, like words, sometimes it's a memory. But I'm just open to whatever is going to come. But this deck is very unique in that there are so many little bits. And once that little bit of something captures my attention, the rest kind of ceases to exist for a little while. So this deck is very different in that regard, because the other decks, it's generally that whole card, that whole experience. All right. Another one that's a bit different, Lights in Dark Places. Love this. This is on, probably already finished. It's on Kickstarter. I backed the second version. By Jeremy Parker. This is one of my favorite decks. Love this deck. And I use it with other people. I use it with myself. And it's just a fabulous deck. And this is one that I do focus on that message too. I use this deck in tarot readings. I use it on its own as that, that daily pull. And this deck sits on my desk. I use this not every day, but I use it a lot. You know, and like something like this. If you had one wish, what would it be? You know, and what's my gut reaction to that? Right? What's that first thing? Now, you know, for example, if we're doing this one, right? If I'm conflicted about that wish, or if I'm like, oh, I really wish for this thing, but I don't, how am I going to do that? I don't know. Then that would prompt me to do a reading, right? If I'm like, I have no clue, I don't know, like I know what I want, but I don't know how to get it. So that might be a way to start pulling. And this is the Asherah Tarot by Stasia Barrington. And it's one of my favorite decks too. So this can be like a jumping off point. It doesn't have to be, and it's not always. But I will also use this as sometimes like a nice wrap up. So I might do a spread. You know, so I have this spread. Might then go in with an oracle, and just kind of pull, you know, wherever. And then I might say, you know what, I need that cherry on the top, you know, or it might be kind of like this, where, okay, this is complete, but I feel like I need to give you a little something more. Like I feel like there's a message that still needs to come across. Oh, and it came up again. So that tends to be how I use it. Yeah, and with this deck, the message is the primary focus, but then the artwork definitely comes in too. And it's just, oh, it's such a great deck. I can't even, it's so much more than it seems. I love this. I have a print of that. I think it came with the first Kickstarter, but I love it. But yeah, so that tends to be how I use this deck. And I use it a lot. I use it a lot. Again, a lot with myself, but a lot with others. And I'll add it to anything too, right? I know like some people will pair, you know, certain decks with certain decks. And I do that as well. Don't get me wrong. But I just kind of pull whatever too. So if I feel like that deck is calling me or it needs to be used, I'll use it. I don't care what tarot deck I'm using at the time. Like if I finish up a reading and I feel called to this, it doesn't have to go with that tarot, right? I don't care. You know, it can be really nice if they go, but that's not my focus. Okay. So let's do, this is the Magical Child Oracle, which I love so much. This is by Marie Bento, divinemuses.net. Now this deck, such a great deck. So this one, I tend to use in spreads. I tend to use with Oracle. I, in fact, tend to use, let me grab them. Where's my other? Oh. I got stuff everywhere. Okay. So I tend to use it most often with her tarot deck, which I love. Which is the Antiquarian Tarot, because it just goes so perfectly with it, and with the Divine Muses Oracle, which is hers as well. I love the three of these together. So when I use it like this, I will start with tarot often. Sometimes I'll start with Divine Muses and kind of, where do we need to go? I think that most often when I start with an Oracle deck, it's because there isn't a firm direction or question. It's more kind of an open-ended where either I just want to do a spread, but I don't have anything in mind, or someone comes to me and they want a reading, but they don't have anything in mind. I feel like that's most often when I go for Oracle first. So I might just start off with that one card, right? Boundaries. It's a great card. So then, initially, when I read like this, my focus is that message, right? Boundaries, right? What do we need to know about boundaries? What needs to happen? So then I'll pull tarot based around this, right? It's most often going to be a larger spread than I can really fit here right now, but just, for space sake, let's just go with the two. So now here's my focus for this boundaries thing. And then at that point, I'll maybe delve a little deeper into this, right? Taking in the artwork a bit more. And as I'm doing that, as I'm considering what the tarot's saying to me, that's when I'll pull in here. Now, it all depends. Sometimes I might pull one and be like, yes, that's all I need. Sometimes I might pull one for each card to kind of go into it. Sometimes it might just be this whole kind of sentence, or it might be more of like, if it feels like this reading is pretty much complete, and it's not so much I need to delve any deeper or anything like that, I might say, what's something this person, well, here, this is one thing that I really like to do, because remember, threes, but I tend to do for myself a lot, I do for clients, is, what do I need to know right now, right? And I'll just focus on that. What do I need to know? What do I need? Oh, that came out before. What do I need to understand? Because that's different. It's not the same. And what do I need to do? Right? So I have my action now. What do I need to do? So that may just be kind of that added on part. Now, at that point, I might be done, or especially if I'm reading for myself, I may want to do a spread based on each of these or all of them as one. It just depends. And I keep saying that, I'm sorry. But that's kind of how it is. But with this deck, I will say that depends on the card, depends on the moment. So sometimes I'll kind of move into the card. Sometimes I'll focus on that message more than anything, at least initially. Sometimes it'll be the artwork. It just depends. So this deck and decks like this tend to be kind of wild cards in that regard, and divine muses as well. Whereas with a lot of the other decks, it's usually one way or the other, right? Either I'm going to get sucked into the card and do some path working, or I'm going to really focus on the messages, or, you know, maybe there's a mixture, but it's not... It's usually going to be... it's usually going to stay one or the other. Whereas this one, if I pull 3 cards, right? Like right now, this one's pulling me in. This one's more the message. This one's kind of both. So, I mean, it's crapshoot. And I could pull the same cards tomorrow and feel totally differently. So, I hope this is making sense. Let me know if this is useful at all to you. I hope I'm not just rambling. I'm really trying to explain it as best I can. Alright. So, the next one is one of my, definitely my ride or die Oracle decks. And I love so much. This is Roots and Wings, and it's by Cat Rails, who, by the way, has a new Oracle deck coming out. I'm so excited. I did edge it, and I did a terrible job, and I kind of love it, I gotta say. And it's messy and sloppy, but it just feels earthy. I mean, it's really, like, there are some really sloppy ones. And I do have a pristine full size of this, but this is my deck. I love this deck. Now, the way I use this deck, I use this deck every way. I mean, so I will absolutely add this to every reading. Doesn't matter. Generally, you know, I'll do the tarot spread first, and then I'll do the oracle. Sometimes it'll be focused on specific cards, like what do I need to understand about the 10 of Pentacles? What do I need to watch out for? That type of thing. Sometimes it might be, I'll do that full reading with the tarot, and based on that, I'll have a question, and I'll pull the cards just kind of based on that, right? In response to where that tarot spread was leading me. Sometimes I will use this on its own. And this is actually one of the few decks that has its own spread that I actually use. And it's very simple, and it's very sweet, and I really like it. It's a garden spread. So it's basically, you have that seed, right? And the water to nourish you. The weeds, what do you need to watch out for? The sun to nourish, the soil, that foundation, basically. So I do really enjoy this spread, actually. Sometimes I'll do kind of my own spread with the deck. And, yeah, just, I tend never, I don't think I ever do just one card with this deck. I tend to do at least 3, often 9. It just lends itself to a larger deck. Now, it does come with like a little fold-out guidebook, and it gives you like 2 sentences for each card. I don't use it. I did initially. This is one of the first oracles that I ever got, ever used. But now I just pull what I pull. I tend to focus on the images first with this deck. And then I'll look at the keyword. Oftentimes, there will be a correlation. Sometimes there isn't. And I'm okay with that. Sometimes they go different ways, but I take both. For example, like I might look at this card. Right? So we have this bear, and the keyword is intuition. But I might look at the bear and say, you know what, I'm getting a feeling of like worry or fear, right? So now if I take that and mix it with intuition, maybe the message is that, you know, in order to release that fear, you know, let your intuition guide you to that place where you can feel safe, where you can feel whatever. Or maybe it's saying you need to listen to that intuition. You need to listen to that fear because it's trying to protect you. It's trying to guide you. It's going to depend on the rest of the cards. It's going to depend on how I feel. But that's how I use this deck. I use it a lot with other decks. And I should say, and I guess I haven't really talked about it too much, I do tend to pair Oracle with Oracle quite a bit as well. So I guess I touched on it, but for example, this is a good one. So this is the Herbal Astrology Oracle, and this is by Adriana Aiellas, artwork by Josephine Clarks. And this one's a newer one to my collection, but it's fabulous, and it goes really well with Roots and Wings. Roots and Wings goes with everything, though. I am so serious. I have never paired it with anything that I thought, oh no, it just goes with everything. But I might start off. Usually, when I use Roots and Wings with just an oracle, I tend to do the other oracle first. Don't ask me why. It's just what I tend to do. So I might pull. So say I just pull this card, right? So then I might go to Roots and Wings. Now it does have this keyword of harmony. I might focus on that, I might not. Going into the artwork might feel a little different. So we have unfamiliar territory. And then I might pull another one. And now we have strength. So from there, I might pull out a tarot deck and say, okay, if we go with harmony, right? Because we might not. We might go with something else. But if we go with harmony and we're thinking about strength, we need strength for what? What is it exactly that might be challenging, that really is going to require that inner reserve? Oh, now we have strength and strength. Oh, man. All right. So, and then going here into that unfamiliar territory. Is harmony that unfamiliar territory, or do we need to go into that territory to feel that harmony, right? What do we need to know about that? What do we need to do? And we have the Four of Cups. So I might kind of go from there, and then I might go back to Roots and Wings. All right, so, okay, we really need some strength going on here. Like, what's up? And we have home. Is this related maybe to that home life, to that stability? Maybe it needs to be created. Maybe, whatever. don't want that bear again. I don't know why. And then over here, so I'm kind of building on each card, right? So building on the Four of Cups, we have that bound. And this is unfamiliar territory. Maybe it's unfamiliar for you to be paused, for you to feel stuck. Maybe you're, you tend to charge ahead and move ahead. And lately you've just been stagnating, or you feel blocked, right? And it might continue on. And it just kind of depends. But for me, the key is just that being open to being led by the cards. That's ultimately what it is. So what I do today might be completely different from what I do tomorrow, or the day after, or next week, or next month, or next year. And for me, it's important to be open to that change, to that movement. I like change, though. I am a very ritualistic person. I could eat the same thing every day very happily. I don't care. But I'm also not like a foodie. Until at some point I'm suddenly sick of it. And I guess that's kind of how I am with everything. So I love change, but I also love that consistency, maybe. That, I don't know, I get into a groove with things. So I'll do them again and again and again. But then at some point I get bored of it, or it just doesn't work the way I want it to work anymore. So I change things up. Now, I have one more kind of set that I want to go over, because it's a little different, and it's also a lot different. These are Lenormand decks. So I'm gonna show you three. But these are Lenormand decks that I use at least sometimes as oracles. Okay. So this one is the Slavic Folklore Lenormand deck, and it's by Fae Oracle. Now this, look at those backs, love them. It's a beautiful, beautiful deck. Now the thing about this, actually I'm going to pull you in now, because so now we have smaller cards, so that you can kind of see them a little better. This deck, definitely can use as Lenormand. It is a Lenormand deck, but I think, to me, it's great to use just as an oracle. And in fact, when I first got this, I don't think I was even reading Lenormand properly. I was using it just as an oracle. So there's so much in the images, which are beautiful, right? So there's so much you can read intuitively. But this deck also has keywords, which now they're for the Lenormand, right? But certainly you can use them for keywords as well. As like oracle keywords. Like, what's the difference? When I use this deck as an oracle, I tend to usually pull like 3. And I don't think I ever use this by itself. It's always going to be combined with the tarot, just onto whatever spread. So, keep pulling. Oh, here, this is a good example that I haven't done. So this is the Drifting Moon Tarot. Now this is a majors only, and it's by Lee White. And this is a great example because a lot of times I will pair majors only with oracles to kind of tell that story. So, okay, so we have the Hierophant. Now, sometimes I'll pull 3 of these. Sometimes I'll only pull 1. Okay? It doesn't matter. But then from here, you know, this gives me the overall energy of what's going on, of what needs to be addressed. But then this is more of the how, right? So this is that overall message, like something's going on here. This is what you need to watch out for, what you need to do. You know, this is how you can deal with this. Actually, these look really nice together too. So for this, we have the snake, right? Desire, ambition, deception. The clouds, doubt, confusion, secrets. The night, energy, arrival, action. So I may or may not keep those keywords. I tend, with this particular deck, I tend to focus on the images, honestly. They're just very evocative to me. I may take a peek at the keywords. Those keywords may or may not steer what I'm seeing in the cards. Sometimes it's just totally nothing to do with it. I mean, honestly, sometimes it's right there. It depends. I'm sorry. I know I keep saying it, but it's true. I tend to do these in 3. Do I? I don't think I ever just pull 1. I feel like I always do 3, sometimes 6, sometimes 9. But it's just such a great deck for Oracle to me. I mean, look at that. Look at this card. Right? Like, what do you see there? What's going on? You know, forget about the keywords for a minute. What's going on there? That light, that, you know, we have those butterflies. Is there a transformation taking place? What's happening? So that's kind of how I guess with this deck is to me more one that I ask questions about, right? Like, what's going on? Why is this happening? Why am I focusing on that? Where is, you know, whereas with most of the other oracles, it's more just the what, I guess. Like, what do I feel? What do I see? What am I experiencing? This is like a why. You know, here, why is, I just, you know, what is this? What caused it? Why is this going on? Why is this almost abandoned? Right? In this moment, it feels abandoned. Later on, it might not. But that's kind of how, I hope this makes sense, how I use that deck. Now, another Lenormand deck that I tend to use as an oracle is the Clair de Lune by Anna Torian. So these, just toss aside. Now you could, it does come with the, you know, Lenormand keywords, and you could use that still like an oracle, right? You know, when you read Lenormand, the cards around it can be more important than when you read with an oracle, although not always. A lot of times the oracle, it's going to change too. But to me, this is so evocative, and this is another one that really sucks me in. And it's funny because I mean, there is a lot of detail, but there's not. You know, there's not a lot of color. Maybe that's what it is. But the artwork is so gorgeous, and it just sucks me in there. And I would say that it is this one is more of an a sort of kinesthetic experience. It's all about what I feel with this deck. And those feelings will create messages or words or hints that lead me down different paths. Sometimes my eye kind of focuses, or my eyes, I do have more than one, focus on specific things. Sometimes things look different. Like right now in this moment, I feel cobwebs. And I can tell you that's the first time I felt that with that card. It just changes all the time. And so then I'll go into that, like, okay, cobwebs, why? What's going on with that? I kind of go into that. Now this one, I do sometimes just pull one or even two. I know that's weird. It's weird for me, but I do. And I will add it to a reading. I will add this to a larger reading. So, what else we got? So here's another Trionfi Della Luna. This is Paradoxical Rose, illustrated pips. So I might, actually these are really nice together too. So I might be doing a reading, So I've pulled some cards, and then go through that coffin, man. Go through and pull out, maybe as like a compliment, maybe as a bridge, right? Bridging these ideas, going forward. Yeah, and just taking it for what I see, where it goes. And it may be very different from the standard Lenormand, right? Like for me right now in this moment, this is about putting old ideas to rest, right? Those things that aren't serving you, that are holding you back, that are harmful, right? Putting them in bed, those old resentments and insecurities and angers and hurts, just letting them finally go. Letting them go and setting them down so that you can move forward in this healthier way, so that you can have this greater health in your mind, in your body, in your spirit, so that you can experience all the joy, all the wonder, all that energy, reclaiming your energy for yourself. And see, and this is where I go, right? That's how it happens. Yeah. So it might have a lot to do with the card as it's supposed to be read. It might have nothing to do with it. And I just let it take me where it's going to take me. It's like, it's like if you go into the ocean, you ever just kind of float or even tread water, and you're just kind of hanging out and letting that current pull you in closer to the shore, and then it pulls you back out, and just enjoying that movement. That's how I read, if that makes any sense. Okay, last one. Now this is the Precious Possum Lenormand, which, can I tell you how much I love possums? And this is by Logan Townsend. And such a sweet deck. Like, Precious is the perfect name for this deck, I'm just going to say. And this is another one. This is I think when I got this deck was when I was first really getting into reading Lenormand, like Lenormand. But it's so cute and sweet and charming, and like, you don't need to know anything about Lenormand to get fabulous messages from this deck. Now this one I do like using larger spreads with, because I just really love this deck. It makes me happy. This is a happy deck, right? It's just so, oh my, I'm like, come on. How precious is that? Yeah, it's so cute. Now, I'm going to show you, because this guidebook is actually super fabulous. So again, forget about Lenormand, right? Just imagine this is just an oracle deck. And let's just pull just one more. Oh, we have the possum card. That's, well, Wee babe, I love that so much. I'm trying to pull one that's like, okay, here. So clouds, right? Now you can look up, what number is clouds? It is in here. So you can find it easily. So it gives you that the confusion, oppression tends to be negative. But we're not using this as Lenormand, right? We're using it as Oracle. So we're not going to look at that. Look at this instead. Pilot Possum is no stranger to the skies. In fact, they were the first possum to fly solo across the Pacific. It's Pacific, I'm just saying. As such, they're unbothered by the storm clouds looming near. They will take their time to find a safe path around the storm rather than flying recklessly through it. And then it talks about in a reading, but you could just take this, right? It's not the same as the keywords. This, so maybe it's about, I mean, to me, right now in this moment, looking at this card, I feel joy. I feel exploration, like really letting go and going for it. That's what I feel. That's not a Lenormand type of, you know what I mean? But that's how this feels to me right now in this moment. I feel wonderment and excitement, and so that's how I would read that if I was doing it right now in a reading. Now, tomorrow I could do a reading with this, pull this, and feel something very different. It just depends. You know, here with the tree, there's so many different ways to take this. There's so many places that my eyes again focus. You know, sometimes I might disregard that precious possum, focus right here, right? Like that's the perfect place to just really relax. That's a nice stable spot where you can just sit and be cozy, rest, observe the world around you. And there's that beautiful light coming down. Or I might focus here. You know, it depends. But, oh my God, I love this card so much. Wait, we're going to read one more because it's too fabulous. And I think it'll give another good example. So, now you can look at this card and, you know, just by looking at it, you know, where's your focus? Is it here? Is it here, right? Boiling over, steaming up this anger, right? Even you might say violence. Is it like, I feel like the mice are just like laughing, right? They stole that stuff and they're like, haha, you know, almost like a kind of impish kind of vibe. So here's the deal. For Lenormand, if you look at the keywords, we have worry, loss, and it's negative. But again, where's your eye gonna go? Now, for the write-up for this, Chief Possum, the celebrated culinary genius and proprietor of the equally celebrated Chateau Possum, has officially lost his cool. Chateau Possum soup du jour, a fabulously creamy tomato basil. Chef Possum's perfectly hand-picked produce, currently or presently skittering across the kitchen floor. Tomato napped by miscreant mice. They will rue the day. So, even if you just read this, if you kind of ignore this stuff, I mean, it can definitely lead you there, but it doesn't have to. So then it does continue in a reading. Mice often symbolizes anxiety, theft, stress, and undermining. When it's drawn with this, again, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, you could read just this little snippet, though, and kind of let your intuition take you where it needs to go without really focusing on the Lenormand aspects. Not that Lenormand isn't wonderful, but I do feel like sometimes, you know, there are so many great, fabulous Lenormand decks, and I think that fewer people read Lenormand. So I think that using them as an oracle can be a great way. And that's how I started reading Lenormand. You know, when I first got Lenormand decks, I didn't read Lenormand. I didn't know anything about, I know a little, but not much. And the reality was I really liked the decks. And I said, I don't care. I want to get these decks. Oh my God. Can you just, precious. And then from there, I started just using them as oracles because I do what I want to do. And that worked out really well for me. I've gotten fabulous readings with Lenormand decks as oracles. But then from there, it's like, yeah, okay, I wanna learn this Lenormand thing too. This is interesting. So then it grew. But I will still use this deck as an oracle. I also use it as Lenormand. It just depends on my mood and where I'm going, what I'm doing. Now, this is one that I will use on its own, but I will also use it with tarot, with oracle, and so on. It just depends. Depends on my mood, depends on what I'm doing. And, again, I just let myself be open. So I really hope I didn't babble on too much. And hopefully this was useful to you at least a little bit. If you have any questions, want to know more about anything, let me know in the comments. Hopefully this isn't too long. Oh, it's long. Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe I'll edit. I don't know. But let me know what you think. Let me know if this was, enjoyable at all, if it was useful at all. And if it wasn't, let me know that too. That's okay. But until next time, just be wonderful to yourself. Be really, really wonderful, because you deserve the best, only the best, all the best, and that is my wish for you.